So welcome everyone. For those who don't know, I asked you to Google yourself just to see what comes up if someone were to Google you. Today's session is managing your digital footprint, and it's part of the O-Week offering for students. My name is Tara Starbird. I am a digital literacy trainer at the library, and I'm joined on chat by my colleague Michelle, who is our communications guru. So she's all across the social medias and is significantly younger than me, so is a really good asset to have here today to answer some of the questions of the stuff that comes up today. So hopefully we'll cover as much as we can, but I do have a really thorough handout with all the links I talk about today and more. So if you feel like you have to write all this down, don't worry, a set of information will come to you with all the stuff I talk about. So really just sit back and absorb it in, and yeah, you don't have to note every single thing that we talk about today. So just some quick caveats. So that's little asterisks in your contract. So I'm an enthusiast of information privacy and digital media privacy, but I'm not an expert. So this is just a hobby of mine that I'm quite passionate about. So while I'll talk about some websites, platforms, and software that I'm demonstrating, please do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Somehow I've got a weird typo here, but anyway. This session really focuses on harm minimization with social media and your digital life, not harm removal. So it's not a perfect world where you can stop everything, but I'm going to talk about strategies you can employ to live in the digital space a bit more safely. And of course, the last one is, by all means, be your true, authentic self online, but do so with an awareness of the digital landscape and of the information that you're leaving as you go around the world. So what I start with is a quick little Menti, which is something menti.com. And what I'd like you to do is find that on your computer or your device, and I will get a code for you so that we can experience, get a bit of information from each other. So I'm just going to present this, and what it's going to do is generate a little code. So when you go to menti.com, you grab your device and you just pop in this code and you answer the question. So that's 1198162. So the question is very simple to start with. What social media platforms do you use? Let me see if I can try to get into this myself, but I'm not usually quick enough. Students tend to beat me to it. They're much faster than I am. So we've got LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp, Insta. Let's go. LinkedIn, I like WhatsApp, Twitter. So a few people on Twitter, Google, Snapchat, Twitter, WeChat. Nice. QQ. I don't actually know that one. Let's look. QQ, Signal, YouTube, ResearchGate, Messenger, TikTok, because TikTok's very popular, isn't it? The young people, and you have Signal, Fitbit, Line, TikTok, so quite a lot of ones. Facebook's still the predominant one. I tend to see that. Although with younger people, I find Facebook is something used to talk to the older people in your life, like your grandparents who aren't on the other social media platforms. So I do hear a lot of people saying, oh, that's so I can talk to grandma, which makes people like me feel incredibly old. No, so there's quite a diverse ones here. We've got Tumblr, which I recall from a few years back. I didn't know that was still going, but that's really nice. Takes me back. But no Pinterest. Usually we get a few Pinterest when we do this one. Okay, so that's a pretty good snapshot. So I'll just go to the next one. There we go. How do you feel about your digital footprint? So you've got sort of the options here, and you'll be able to read that on your phone. That's the same code there. So somewhat worried. Yes, we got, yes, somewhat worried. So for one person has answered, so that's interesting. Listen, what do we have here? I want my social media to be more professional. I hope future employers do not Google me. We get that a fair bit. So in terms of Googling people when it's a future employer, that percentage has gone up very steadily in the last 10 years. to the point that pretty much any job you go for, they're going to Google you. Like, it's very, very likely. It's really only jobs like manual labor, farm hands, those kind of things where people don't bother. But for the most part, you should assume that a potential employer will Google you. And if you get a job, it's quite likely your fellow colleagues will also Google you. So that's interesting. So we've got a pretty diverse range here. And that's really good to see. So 20 people have answered. So a big range of how we feel about our digital footprint. So a few people feel very confident that they manage it and they're not too worried. And some people are somewhat worried, and some people want to be more professional, but they don't know where to begin. And that's pretty common, I would say. So I'm just going to go to the next one very quickly. This will have a different code because you can't have more than more than one. So that code is 4996638. So this is something that's a bit freeform. So feel free to share something that you or a friend, you don't need to say this is going to be anonymous, posted that concerns you. I'm going to put mine in. Let's go 4996638. Posts about drinking, alcohol, and drugs. Yes, that is very interesting. That is a main reason an employer chose not to hire someone, was finding evidence that they are a heavy drinker, even if it's legal, and also drugs as well. So your social media posts reveal a lot to employers about you. So yeah, lots about photos of excessive drinking, photo of me wearing a fruit as a hat. My sister always tags us when we're away on holidays so people know our house is empty. And that's really frustrating. I definitely feel for people with that one. I'm going to put mine in because it's very strange. Let's go submit. Drunkenness location tags, yes, especially for anyone, but for females, that can be particularly dangerous. You're very easy to target. Political content, especially radical. Yes, that is very challenging. Tagging me, yes. Tags of people knowing where you are. So lots on location tags. Childhood pictures can be very embarrassing. Colonoscopy results and photos. Someone that I know has a public Instagram account where pictures are bikini and lingerie pictures, and she wants to be a lawyer. Yes, that is troubling, because how are you going to have a professional career when that happens? So I actually was a teacher for a long time. So I had no social media accounts because I was very aware that students Googled you and parents Googled you, and I didn't want anything to be found. So I'd often have students trying to work out my maiden name or some alias I might be under because they couldn't find information on me. So yes, there's a lot of reasons, a lot of careers that you would want to limit your social media accounts. And this is definitely parent using photo as, yeah, exactly, using their children's photos. So I have children, but their photos aren't online associated with me. I don't post things about my children because I don't want that to be something that comes back to haunt them. But there's a lot of things here. Private identity or phone number. I know it's pretty wild what people do post. Yeah, so this is really interesting. So I will take screen grabs of this and pop them in the slides when I provide the content from here, so you can sort of digest this a little bit more. So that's really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint, if it will permit me so. Just go from the current slide. But yes, that's a lot to unpack there. So I want to ask you a question to begin with is, if you had to pay to use Facebook, Snapchat, whichever ones you use, would you? So while you're thinking about that, no, yeah, so it's interesting. People won't pay for it, yet there is a lot of things you are actually paying for it right now. So what I'm going to do is, I've got sort of a strange thing next. I'm going to show you some photos, and I want you to, if you want to, obviously, in the chat, pop in what the images bring up to you. Now, these are very contentious because people have different views on them. Just want to state that it's all right to have different views on things. So we're here in an open, safe space. So let's go to the next photos. So tattoos. Tattoos are something that have a lot of meaning to a lot of people. For some people, it's very offensive to have any tattoos. For some people, the more the merrier. For some people, it's a religious or cultural thing. But one thing I think we can all agree on, whatever reason people decide to get tattoos, is that they're making a conscious choice. They are choosing to get that tattoo. It might be a bad choice. It might be a choice involving drugs or alcohol, but they make that conscientious choice. So with that in mind, with tattoos in your mind, and also I have no judgment on tattoos because I have some myself, but I'm just saying the views of them culturally and globally are very different. So with that in mind, I want you to think about the last thing you shared on social media. So you can share that in the chat, but you don't have to. So obviously I value your privacy, but you may pop that in the chat so we can think about what was the last thing you shared. And so I'm not very active on most social media. I use Twitter, but I tend to just like and retweet things. I don't post a lot of my own things. I do with Zoom have that little ... feature to know people are typing, because sometimes when you're just in a room alone talking, you feel a bit silly. As people said, memes, nothing personal, room pictures, a photo of my dog digging a hole in the garden. Don't show my landlord. Yes, lots of memes. Yeah, memes are the cultural and political language of our time. Cat photos. A picture of my friends and I. It was sparklers at New Year's. Yeah, so a broad range of things. Maggie says she doesn't post a lot of things. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have they, them in your profile, and that's a concerning thing too, but maybe you haven't expressed your full identity to people, and that's interesting. Yeah. So it shared a link about COVID-19 news in Australia. Yeah, it is interesting. So I want you to think about those posts and think about what that post says about you. And imagine 30 years in the future, someone taking that one post and defining you by it. And that's something that can be a bit daunting. So I want you to think of everything you do online, every site you visit, video you watch, everything you post, like, email, as a digital tattoo that is on you and is permanent. And I don't mean, like I say to people, a cute little tattoo like you might hide on your ankle or, behind your hair or something. When I talk about these digital tattoos, I'm talking full face tats of all of your personal information that you've shared knowingly and unknowingly. Because, like it or not, in all of our movements online, our interactions online, we are accepting digital tattoos that will be around long after we are no longer on this earth. And does anyone know why these photos and these posts and these activities are going to follow us everywhere? Bonus points if you get this answer. And this is also Tara's take a sip of water excuse. So why do we think these digital tattoos will follow us everywhere? What's the problem now? Yeah, so we are leaving digital footprints. A lot of people think, well, there's so much online. There's millions and millions of, if not billions of people posting information. Mine will just get lost in the noise. I don't need to worry about it. My grandchildren won't know anything about me. Yes, Vivian, because data and information has a monetary value. And you cannot delete it. Once it is there, you can remove it, but there may be a permanent record. This is a photo piece on social media. These are tattoos, what do you call temporary tattoos. So do not worry about this poor woman. This is for an exhibition on digital privacy. The issue these days is big data, is that you can have all of a person's information and identify it from the noise, and you can actually predict their behavior better than they can predict their behavior. So when that Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, it was revealed that as part of their shareholder meeting, Facebook told Cambridge Analytica told Facebook that they have 5,000 data points on something like 80 million Americans. Now, to put 5,000 data points into perspective, because we don't understand data points, is if you are married and you've been together a while, it's quite likely your partner will know about 100 data points on you. And if you're a fairly self-aware person, it's quite likely you'll know 500 data points on yourself. So by Cambridge Analytica saying they have 5,000 data points, it means that they can actually predict your behavior long before you can. So places like Google and Facebook and any type of social media, if you're using that regularly to message, to post, they will actually know if you are more or less likely to get pregnant soon, if you are more or less likely to have an affair soon, if you are more or less likely to get divorced soon, perhaps because of the previous one. They know your behavior before you do. And the money that they make by the, yes, Jeplin said, like targeted ads, is all about predicting your behavior. So if they know 5,000 data points on you, they can actually predict where you're going to be in 3 months' time better than you could, better than your partner could. And to give an example of just some of the power of big data, I have a little visual coming up. Now, do not worry about the woman that I appear to be invading her privacy. She doesn't exist. I've created a person from this crowd to demonstrate something. So I do value people's privacy, so I've created a fictitious character. So I'm taking this picture, and I really love this picture because it is the world's largest selfie, which is amazing, and also that no one can gather in a crowd of this size anymore. So it's also novel these days. So we're going to take this picture of the world's greatest selfie, and we're going to identify people in this photo. So I can use this free software called Amazon Recognition. And what it does is it scans all the faces in the crowd, and it gives me their social media profiles. So when I look at the picture again, all of these little boxes indicate to me whether or not it's found their social media profile. So you can see the yellow color means it's pretty certain that they've found this person's social media profiles. As it goes to orangey, greeny, blue, that's less likely to have found it. So you can see in the back, there are a few people that it's not certain it's found their social media profile. But from this one photo, I have access to all of these people's social media profiles. So I've now, this is my fictitious character from here. So her name is Tracy Brazier. And I can scan through her social media profiles, and within seconds, I can know a lot about her. I can know her 2 children, her husband, her father-in-law. I can know she went to the tennis because it also found her photo in a tennis article. I know that she has a dog named Cheddar. I also know that she has a pool. How do I know she has a pool? Because Cheddar has an ID tag. And when I zoom in on Cheddar, I can see his ID tag and I know her address. So I know that she has a pool. In seconds, I know all of this about Tracy Brazier without ever speaking to her. And it means that when I meet Tracy Brazier, I can have similar interests to her. I can have read the same books, like the same music, because I already know this about her, because all of that information is readily available online. She will not know, but this can be a tactic I could use. Not only that, I can actually run free software to give a psychometric profile of Tracy Brazier. So I can run her Twitter account through some simple software that will give me a personality chart on her. Tell me a bit about her. And that's quite distressing. So I have a Twitter account. I don't post a lot of personal information. So mine comes across as very aloof and very snobby, according to this analysis, because I don't post personal information, and it goes by the pronouns I use. I don't use I, me, we, those kind of things. So just from my tweets, it can do this. And this is a real person named Tracy Brazier, but I don't know who that is. So I just put the Twitter handle in, and this is the information I got. And we've all seen social media have big consequences in people's lives. And I run this slide with a tsunami of social media scandals. And every time I run this, I can find new articles about it. Now, whether the people who've lost their jobs, lost their scholarships because of their behavior online, whether they deserve it or not, I'm not arguing that. But it just shows how real the consequences are. So the first example I have is 10 students had a hidden Facebook group where they shared offensive memes. They lost their full scholarships to Harvard from this group, which they thought was private and safe. In a recent Australian election, we had 2 people on both sides of the parties end up having to quit because of their social media posts. Again, I'm not condoning what they posted, their behavior online, but it cost them their careers. This woman made an insensitive joke about AIDS in Africa. She is an AIDS worker. She tweeted it to her small group of friends, got on the plane, and was fired before she landed in Africa. Public servants have attacked the government on Twitter and lost their jobs. Recently, in 2020, hospital staff have been sacked because of complaining about conditions for lack of PPE gear, lack of safety considerations for their health. This Polish nurse shared not recipes, patterns for how to make your own PPE gear because the hospital wasn't supplying enough. She was fired. MTV star in the Black Lives Matter made a joke of Black Lives Matter, and she lost her job. And the interesting police officers on both sides of the thing, both sides of the Black Lives Matter movement were fired for the opposite reason. One for supporting the Black Lives Matter and one for not supporting the Black Lives Matter on social media. And yeah, we've also seen the ones involved in the riot being found through their social media because it's not very difficult to do a face scan and find their social media profiles. And, obviously not condoning what people do, but this could be used against anyone in a protest. Anyone who has engaged in a protest can be tracked in this way. We've also seen a lot of the election tampering, particularly in 2016 and many attempts in 2020 before things were shut down. And it can be quite disturbing to see how much information they have. And when we talk about data points, if Facebook has 5,000 data points on its users, it's incredibly easy to target a political ad to people who own a specific type of car, to people who've been divorced in the last 2 years, to people who have, had cancer in the last 5 years. It's very easy to target an ad at their most vulnerable time that will persuade them. And that's an unfair advantage. It's like having your trained psychologist telling the advertisers your biggest weaknesses. Yes, it does, Jelaine, it does. But I'm not here to be completely bleak. I just want to set the tone of the digital space that we live in. And I've got lots of these ads, of course, about how things are because it's pretty wild. But I don't want you to fear and to run away. I want you to learn to develop conscientious digital practices. So we talk about this in Australia. I like to compare it to swimming. Australia is a land of ocean. So it's just surrounded by ocean and it's a beautiful thing, but there are sharks. There are rips that will pull you out to sea, and there are many stinging things in the water. Do we teach our children not to swim? No. We teach our children to swim and to swim to the conditions. So we go to a beach that is safer. If we're up in North Queensland, we go to a netted beach. If we go to the beach here, we teach our children what a rip is. So conscientious digital practices are acknowledging the dangers of the digital ocean, but learning to live with them. And believe me, it's very much something that is your personal choice. If you want to 100% live online and have all of your medical things online and share everything, that's up to you. But if you want to take control, there are ways and things I'm going to show you today that can take back that control from the companies. So despite all this, I do love social media. I'm active on Twitter. I like engaging with other librarians and researchers. I'm learning about activists around the world, and I really, I'm not out there protesting in their countries, but I do like to like their work and, support them. And, that's something small that I can do. So I do enjoy these things. I get a lot of news and information from there, but I'm very careful. So this is a screenshot of my Twitter handle. I think it's a little bit old, this one, but can anyone notice anything? Yes, it's my full name, Tara Starbird, which is unusual. But if you look at here, what do you notice? Yes, my profile picture does not contain my face. Correct, Vivian, I am not from Antarctica. Dali's painting, yes, that's a Snapchat Dali painting of me. Fake birthday and location, correct. So believe it or not, I was not born in 1889. That's the furthest back Twitter would let me go. I tend to always do that, as old as I can possibly be on all the social media that I use. It is amusing because I do get served up ads for over 90s cruises and products for people over 90, as you can imagine, which is a bit amusing. I do believe social media has the power, particularly to organize. And we've seen that with protests around the world. They've used social media to highlight injustices, to connect with like-minded people, and to organize. And so it does have a lot of potential in learning as well. You can connect with people studying your subject around the world. You can connect with researchers who are in your research area. And that's a really powerful thing, especially when you're in postgrad, maybe even thinking of a PhD and you want to connect with like-minded researchers. It's a really powerful tool. Now, a lot of people say to me, but Tara, maybe some of it will go away. Maybe some of that content from the past will disappear. And we talk about the MySpace phenomenon, which is a blessing for people my age because content from 2003 to 2015 evaporated. And I was very happy because that was the only thing I was most concerned about was my strange MySpace accounts from the past. So yes, some stuff from the past will be gone forever and will be deleted, but not everything. So going forwards, I want you to treat everything that you post, like, comment on, email, and even view as potentially public. So that's everything from, a positive Facebook post about a weekend with your friends to something that will easily get you fired. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. So that would be an instant firing, so hungover, that sort of drinking thing. Everything you do online may potentially be public. So Japlain said, a police internet safety talk. The speaker mentioned that a fake birthday on social media could mean that if you went to court, this could be used as proof you were an untrustworthy person. Yeah, in theory, you were meant to put your full accurate information, but I don't think anyone is faulted for it. I do think it would be unusual. I think most people would be sensible not to have their birth, particularly your birth date, because that's something that banks and passport agencies use to identify you. So particularly for identity fraud, I think it would be dangerous to actually put your actual birthday anywhere. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point. And I think if you, these days particularly, it wouldn't be seen as that unusual. And, often mine say 1929. So I'm not trying to fool anyone that I'm nearly 100 years old. So it feels like it some days. So this is the argument too, is that we make the choice. And that was the thing, we use these apps. We make the choice. But we call this the privacy paradox. So we're deeply worried about our social media, but many people, and these I think are the three issues, don't consider their information to be their own, that they have ownership of that information, don't value their privacy, don't place a monetary value on their privacy. And some just believe it's the price we pay for access to YouTube, social media, and games and shopping. But if you want to know what that price is, what the value of your privacy is, it's quite eye-watering. So this is 2018 net revenue and then 2019 net revenue. So I don't have 2020 data yet. This is Facebook's ad revenue only. So that's from using your data points to advertise more directly to you. So 55.8 billion US dollars. And I can tell you that's a lot of Australian dollars. Google, $116.46 billion just from targeting ads based on our emails, based on our searches, based on what we watch on YouTube. 2019. So a year later, Facebook's gone up as well, as has Google. So if they can improve their ability to predict your behavior using big data, using these algorithms, it's a substantial profit for them. So I want you to picture 2030. I'm very sort of mindful of the time. Trying to get through this in an hour is tricky. It used to be a bit longer. Think of the you of 2030. It's hard for me to picture. I'll be a very old woman in 2030. All your posts from today, from the past, and from the future, are they presenting a history of you? So by all means, have a personality online. Be yourself, be an activist, be what you want to be. But there are tools that can sort of stem the flow of your personal information and help protect you in terms of your employability and your safety online. So you have the power all along. What we're going to try to do today is show you tools that let you make your digital footprint say the right things about you. So we're going to answer, how do I make my digital footprint say the right kind of things about me? And it's an interesting thing where we look at our social media profile. It doesn't need to be dull. You can still be online. But a really surprising thing was employers were more likely to hire someone if there was social media evidence that they volunteered. So that has nothing to do with your job. If they were a soccer coach, if they, helped out with their religious group, if they did a homeless meal project, anything they did that was contributing to community was seen as massively valuable. And they were more likely to hire a person whose social media had a record of volunteering than they were to sort of really bother with, your skills necessarily. It was showing that you were a well-rounded person. So showing that you're interested in art, in sport, in a variety of things just shows them that you're an interesting person. And yeah, your digital footprint can actually end up highlighting those good things about you that make you more employable than you would imagine. It's not just about your CV. It's about being a real person, having interests, and particularly contributing to your community. So we're going to look at how can we make a conscious choice that we've taken control of with our social media, that it's not just something we passively do, something that we've taken back the control. So this is something you just have to accept. If a service, software, platform is free, you and your data are the product. So you are making billions for these companies by putting your data out there. So we'll probably start with everyone's favorite. These are my tips and tricks for Google. So a lot of people believe that if it's happened on social media, it's on Google forever, but not quite. So through Google and through a lot of social media now, because they've been pressured by various governments, they now have to let you download your data. And I highly recommend, if you use Gmail, if you use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to do the instructions that I'll provide in the handout and download your data. I was a user of Gmail. You tend to have it to sign into a lot of things. And I thought I was fairly conscientious. But when I requested my data from Google, which took about a week because of how long I had used it, I was really shocked at what information Google had on me. Ziloon, so should we include a photo of ourselves when sharing volunteering or on Facebook? And that's again is up to you. I'm in the newspaper a few times. I lived in a small town, so I can't really avoid that. If you do anything in a small town, you're in the newspaper. So it's all right if it's photos that you're happy existing in 20, 30 years. So I think definitely if you are already online and a photo of you volunteering, to me, that's not hurtful in any way. It does form a bit of a picture of you, but yeah, it's sort of your professional decision. I think that would only really be a benefit from an employability point of view. So Google, what Google knew about me was distressing. So the normal stuff I expected, my name, my gender, everyone I email, all the phone numbers, where I live, locations I've most frequently visited, where I work, because it had my location data, which I thought I had switched off most of the time, but not enough for it not to know. Where you work, every Google search, online purchases, ads, websites. I sort of assumed Google knew all of that. And for the most part, I tried to be signed out of Google when I did searching because I didn't like that it was sort of scanning all my searches. But it had everything from 2011. So it had every movie I've ever looked up, every Google Maps search location, every YouTube video I've ever looked for or watched, which even when my children are on there, there's a lot of Minecraft videos. So it could basically chart the age of my children and probably based on some of their interests would take a guess at their gender. And that's from me not providing any of that information. It knew every place I visited around the world. The red ones really stressed me out was every illness I had ever Googled, every medical practitioner I have ever searched, every Googling of a new love interest or celebrity crush. So I tend to watch a show and then look up all the actors. It knew that. It was very distressing to see. It also knew the cost of every single computer I had ever logged in from. So fun fact, if you want to buy, to purchase travel to anywhere, it will actually assess your computer value and then give you prices based on the value of your computer and your GPS location. Amandine, there are ways to get this information from Google, and they legally now have to provide that. So I do have links coming in a handout once this is done, but Michelle can probably put those in to the chat for you. And I really recommend doing it with all social media you use. It's sobering, but it's really important to find out. Facebook. So just to state my bias flat on, I do not like Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook. So I wasn't on it when I was a teacher because it was too fraught with my personal identity, and particularly in a smaller town when you're a teacher, you're effectively a B celebrity. You do need to have a very clean record, and it just wasn't something I was willing to risk. But Facebook is aware, because we message within it and we do so much within it, of when we are of our personality type, so extrovert, introvert. It knows when we're more open to suggestion and we're less open to suggestion based on the games we're playing and the activity we're doing. So those targeted ads aren't just targeted, they're really targeted for when you are most likely to click on them, when you are feeling your lowest. So they'll know if someone is feeling depressed before they know they're feeling depressed, because of the patterns they've seen in other similar people before they end up searching for a psychologist for depression, or meditation techniques and all that. They know so much about us before we even know it. I'll try to make sure I'm looking at the time now with 20 minutes to go. I do believe that there are ways to use Facebook safely, but I am mindful that I'm not that trusting of Facebook, and I'll just be flat out with that. I don't trust Facebook. So you should definitely download your data from Facebook, and especially if you've been on a long time, be prepared to be quite shocked by what comes up there. But ways you can protect against Facebook is to regularly update your privacy settings. Every time Facebook does an update, it resets your privacy to open. And if you can, do not fill in your full name, your address, your date of birth correctly. Download your data, so please do that. Set a professional profile. If you need to use Facebook for one of your uni subjects, create a professional one. You may not want the people who you've just met at uni having access to all of your photos. I know people who've been divorced whose ex-partner has had their wedding photos from 10 years ago on Facebook. They don't want that there anymore. And you probably don't want people knowing everything about you until you're more comfortable. Avoid tests and surveys. Has anyone ever done a which Harry Potter character are you test? There's so many sort of fun, silly personality tests on Facebook. Those are psychometric profiles, and that's giving Facebook more data to advertise to you. So really avoid tests and surveys, or fill them in incorrectly. Removing and untagging. That is a timely thing. You can actually pay an outside organization to clean up your profile. If you are thinking of going into politics or high corporate, it's probably worth your while to just pay a company to scrub your social media. But if you're like me and you don't have a lot of money, it's just something you're going to need to manually do. And it's perfectly okay to ask your friends and family to untag you. And that's an etiquette I think we need to build into modern life, is like, hey, I'm eating a cake and I look terrible. Please get rid of that photo. Or, your parents, asking them to not post photos. I have known students that I've done this for who are quite young, and their entire life is online, from their pre-birth scans to the modern day, from the time they wet their pants in kindy, from that time they had an outburst as a teen. And that's all documented. And it's a very complicated conversation to have with your parents. But I think as an adult now, you can actually enter that conversation and say, I want this back. I want this off. This is my life, not yours. And that's the reason I've decided to keep my kids' life off the internet. But it is a really tricky situation for younger people who have lived their entire life online. Confuse the algorithm. Facebook's getting pretty good at recognizing this, but if I am on social media, I tend to click on things that I have no interest in, or ads that I have no interest in, just to mess it up. But they're getting pretty good at sorting out the noise of that. Amanda, if you tend to work, it's just a good question. Would it be worth paying a company to do it if you want to work in security or intelligence? Personally, I think that would be a good idea. Again, do your research, make sure the company is a trustworthy company, but a lot of people do these things to clean up their social media. And yeah, I think particularly anything that is going to have a lot of scrutiny of you personally, you will need to think about even ghosting online and maybe having 1 or 2 aliases you use to connect with close family and friends, but nothing with your name on it. And that's something that I actually know people living in Canberra who work in government who have to do that level. Twitter. So I'm a user of Twitter, but you really should download your data from Twitter. Michelle, I don't think I gave you this link. Apologies. But I do recommend it. I have the links to the psychometric stuff if you're curious, if you want to run your stuff through here and see what it says about you. It's a bit interesting, bit eye-opening. I did used to demonstrate Donald Trump's account with this because it was pretty humorous, but now he's banned. So I should have taken some screenshots because it was very scathing of his lack of vocabulary, and the words that he favored were quite amusing. And that's tweet tails and follower wonk you can do. Those are just ways to analyze what an employer will find if they do a quick scan about you. And it even gives your top tweets, main things that you've done. I'm not very active, so it's, giving me not many things. And this is the one when you did Trump, which was always very amusing. Of the main words he used were, of course, Trump, America, great, and a bunch of misspelled words as well. So mine's pretty dull. And I don't mind having a profile that's there that shows I do know how to use social media. I'm not a Luddite, but I'm not active on there. And it even gives you the most time of day that you post. And that has been known to impact people's employment. So if they see that from the hours of 9 to 5, you're dramatically posting, it's showing the employer that you are lazy and you're not doing your job. So a lot of employers will look at that and go, oh, their posts are fine. And yes, they're on social media. They're not posting anything offensive, but that's too much social media time and I won't hire that person. So they can find out how much time you spend on each app every day very easily, and even the hours of the day that you tweet. So that was quite disturbing, I must say. And I don't think I've got a slide of that one, but it will give you a bit of a summary of the most times of day that you tweet, bearing in mind that it's American time. So you have to kind of work out where you are in American time. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is social media, just like anything else. It has its privacy concerns, just like anything else, but it has a lot of benefit for people who are entering that professional phase of life, adulting, as we like to call it. And so I recommend using it, but cautiously. It is a lot of information on yourself, especially if you have a CV there. So it's fine to have a loosely filled in CV. It doesn't need a ton of information, but being on LinkedIn is a really high indicator for employment. It's probably the first place your employer will go is to check your professional credentials. And what I do like about LinkedIn is people you have worked with can verify your credentials. So I can go on to Michelle's, and I believe I have, and said, yes, really good at social media, really good at this. And those endorsements boost your profile when an employer is looking at you. They can check you out and go, whoa, 18 people say that they are really across psychometric testing or data visualization. So there are pros and cons to LinkedIn. But I do think as a professional, as a grown-up, it's something you should really consider and do that as carefully as you want to. So it's all right just having a low-key profile, just something that indicates you know how to use LinkedIn and that you're an active person online. Would employers be able to find out your information before you change it? They'll find it at the time that they search. So if you've gone for a job, they may search it before you've had time to change it. So anyone can search your LinkedIn at any time, your family, your friends, it's all publicly out there. It's a line from one of the Avengers series that, surveillance used to be hard, but now they surveil themselves. So whatever is on there at the moment they search is what's there. They won't see the past stuff that you've deleted for the most part, but they will see what's there at present. And that can change day to day. So a few things I'd like to just show you, just being very mindful of the time, is Just Delete Me. This is a real website. I love it. And it is one, I've just got a screenshot of this, where you can go through a ton of social media and it links you directly to their delete page. So if you have a Facebook account that is from your youth and has a lot of problematic content on it, you can just directly delete it and start fresh. One thing I would recommend is adding a layer. So sign into your Facebook account, change your name, your date of birth, as much information as you can, untag as many photos as you can, and then delete. It just buries it under another layer. So I do recommend if you've got a particularly bad account, it might be worthwhile to start fresh. And Facebook doesn't make it easy. So all of these sites will tell you how easy or difficult it is to delete. So red is fairly difficult and black is impossible. So interestingly, the Animal Crossing social media community, you cannot delete your account. So I love Animal Crossing. I'm a big fan. So if I was on those forums back in 2004, 2008, I cannot delete my information from there. So there are sites that you actually are just stuck with, and there are sites that you can delete. So this is just a quick way to get to all the things that you want to delete quickly. Another one is about data privacy. Have I been pwned? So this is, has my email address been leaked in some type of breach? So if you type, have I been pwned in here? Jackie, you cannot delete profiles that you no longer have access to. But if you have lost passwords, you can contact the company like Facebook, social media, and explain the situation. This is a very old account. I would like access to it again. And you usually can jump through enough hoops to get access again, and then you can delete it. So they do have to provide you with access. So it can be tricky if it's an old account that maybe the email doesn't exist anymore, but you can prove enough information to get in. Typically, they have to support you in that. They might make it difficult and take a few weeks, but you can. So I really recommend putting all your email addresses into Have I Been Pwned? I've used a few services that have been pwned. My mum had her account hacked so massively that if I put hers in here, it's just ridiculous how many things she's been involved in. And my mum has, of course, kept the same password until she was hacked, which was admin1234. And so please have a strong password is what I would also like to say. Yes, you have been pwned. And so check the date on the time that you've been pwned. If you have changed your password since then, it should be okay. But yeah, keep an eye on when you were pwned and think about signing in and changing some of those details. It's really unlikely that you won't have been pwned at least once from using social media. And we've seen that with, with Canva, with some fitness apps, with a number of ones. So a random password generator is a really good idea, Amandine. That as long as you don't lose the computer that has saved it, it is a much safer way than most people's commonly used passwords. I think the top 25 passwords for the last 10 years have only changed slightly, and some go up, some go down. A few new ones get added, but they're super basic, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, password 1, 2, 3, those kind of things. It's pretty wild. Most people have a really bad password. Okay, so beware the apps. Social media apps on your phone, by the nature of downloading them, give them permission to scrape everything on your phone. So I tend to, even when I use social media, I don't sign in through the app on my phone, I sign in through the browser. And that is a really simple layer of protection for yourself. So particularly the apps I'd say to be most aware of are health apps. They monitor your fitness, your health, menstruation cycle, diet, heart rate. That is a ton of personal information. And they've gotten in a lot of trouble for sharing that information with other companies for a price, along with your GPS data. So if they work out that I go from this address to a school 5 days a week, meaning I'm a teacher, and they work out I go to these shops on the weekends and these activities for my children, it will be very easy for the algorithm to work out who I am, even if I have my address de-identified and things like that. So if you can turn off the GPS data on any app you use, turn off the camera and the microphone to only be used when you're using them. But if you can, use the browser. Weather apps have been in so much trouble for selling your GPS data because that's telling you really your shopping patterns, your work patterns, your travel patterns. A weather app can work out if you're having an affair better than a detective could, because it knows that you and this phone sleep at this address, but sometimes you sneak to this address, so it can know so much about you that, even a detective would struggle to find out just by that GPS data. Dating apps, really troublesome. I appreciate it's hard to meet people in a pandemic, so people will probably use them, but be very careful with credit card information, personal information, particularly, sexual orientation, drug use, religious, political views. I know a woman who was really upset about the Capitol riots changed her status to conservative, and then got lots of men, conservative, hitting on her. And she said, were you at the riots? And they'd say, yes, prove it to me. Show me a photo. Oh, wow, you're so cool. And they sent the photo. Yeah, that's me. And then she put that to the FBI. It's a little bit problematic. It's a little funny, but you could see how that could be used in a lot of really sinister ways. So she used Tinder to get the people the FBI couldn't find. That's an interesting one. I might answer that at the end. So yeah, beware of the apps. COVID safe app. So this is the Australian COVID app you're meant to use. I'm a data privacy person. I don't like the app, but I use it because I know that it's what grants us freer access in Australia. If you probably know, we don't have a lot of cases in the community. And if we keep track of what shops we go to and things, it's going to be even more chance that we can keep this going. So if you don't want to have that app on your phone, it's not required in Australia, but you can just keep a little notebook of where you go, and that helps contact tracing if an outbreak does happen. So there are alternatives if you're not comfortable with the app. So for really bad digital footprints, I'm sort of looking at the time going, I don't really have time for the rest of this. Some tips, and again, I'll provide these for you. Things you can do by cleaning up, contacting the platform, ghosting friends and family. And the worst case scenario is change your name. I do a few people who had to do that. Keeping your private life private. So these are my tips for this. And again, I'll provide these slides as an email once the video is up. So these are things you can do. I think the hardest thing for people to do is to unfriend and block people. So we talked about those politically radical people from your past. And I have had to do the same thing, cut off some people on both sides of the political spectrum who were just a bit too extreme. And I was a teacher and I need to be balanced and fair. And it was just too damaging for me to be connected to them. It's hard, but it's probably time, especially if you're going into politics, cybersecurity, anything like that, you need to think about your future. And if you are using social media accounts, why not get a Proton Mail account, something that's double encrypted to use to sign into those things, so it's not something linked to your name. Inexpensive ways to protect your privacy. I know we don't have time to cover all of them. Password manager, or like I think Dean said about a password generator, that's really helpful. Two-factor authentication, a VPN, not a free VPN. A free VPN is just another way to scrape your data. So Facebook provides a free VPN, and you can imagine how secure that is. They've been in a lot of trouble for this VPN. So research VPNs and find one that suits you. It's just an extra protection between you, your internet, and your internet provider. It puts something in the middle there, and it just stops that access. A paper shredder too. Simple paper shredder for your banking documents, things you're done with, get rid of them. Also, one thing I want to tell people is don't give up. So fatalism is, the death of our human rights. So on a personal level, turn off your location services. Don't allow apps to locate you. Don't post information on social media that identifies where you are or impersonal information. And consider your future, your children's future when you're posting. So if you're taking a photo of your niece and nephew, ask if it's okay to post. Consider that a normal etiquette part of the conversation. Ask friends and family to do the same. Try to build that behavior into a normal part of our society. So please, just don't give up. On a societal level, we all live in different countries with different laws and rules. So know the rules of your country. Know what is breaking the law and not breaking the law in your context. But notice surveillance, whether it's hidden or whether it's open. Notice that it's happening and talk about it. Talk about it to friends and family. Go, why do they have to have all these cameras here? Why are they keeping track of my purchases? Notice it. And if you are passionate about it, organize politically. So look at the parties that want to do more to protect information privacy and vote in that way. So I'm not telling you who to vote for, just get to know the policies of the different parties in this area. This is an emerging area. The laws have not caught up. And it's an area that I think is important for people to talk about and push for there to be political changes. Good secure emails. I use Proton Mail. I do have some coming in the links, but there's a number of ones that are double end-to-end encrypted. But I find Proton Mail really good. And I use that quite regularly. And you can link it to another email address if you lose your information or your password, but it is very protected and comes very highly recommended in the InfoSec sector. Sorry, that's my blank one for some reason. So the internet is forever, but there are ways that you can protect yourself and sort of live a bit more online, but live safely online. So thank you so much for coming along, and I can answer a few questions now, but I know people will probably have to go on to their next session. I'm happy to, discuss anything you have to ask in the next few minutes, but for those who have to run, I'm perfectly okay with that. So thank you so much for coming, and safe travels in the online world.